Mills formally announcing her opposition to statewide ballot question 3 this November. The referendum would create Pine Tree Power through a forced buyout of Central Maine Power and Versant. Now, they supply 97% of the state's electricity. But in a new radio address, Mills calls that a gamble on Maine's future and doubts it will improve service.
Question 3 creates a governing board of elected individuals. In other words, politicians with no particular credentials. Electing people only injects a level of politics and partisanship into the delivery of our electricity. That's the last thing we need. And hey, I'm talking as a politician.
Mills says she's also worried a consumer-owned utility might not keep up with modernizing the electric grid and converting to clean energy sources. Now, supporters of Pine Tree Power say the current model is failing and the new company would be more reliable. The state's Committee on Health and Human Services held a discussion on child welfare yesterday. They heard from several organizations, including Mark Moran, chair of the Maine Child Death and Serious Injury Review Panel. Moran says they review cases to recommend improvements in the system. Last year, Moran says he recommended mandatory drug testing that included testing for fentanyl. He recommends hiring more workers in the child welfare department and providing adequate training for the positions.
Many institutions, many hospitals, many outpatient providers did not include fentanyl on their drug screen, so they'd get a negative test result and they would assume that everything was okay, or the department would assume that everything was okay based on a negative drug test result. But in fact, the fentanyl wasn't tested for, and given the prevalence of it, we felt strongly that it should be included.
Moran says the cases they review are often 6 to 24 months after an incident.